Well, gracious greetings, Saints, Stephen family, and guests. Welcome to another edition of Living Water for Thirsty Thursday. We've been talking about excuses. Today we want to unpack it from a little different angle. We want to talk about it from the area of justification, of why we do things, why we give reasons and things of that nature. And then next week we want to close it out talking about ignorance, or I didn't know. But today we want to look at Matthew 25, starting at verse 14. You know this story very well. It speaks about the talents. And it starts off, it says, "For the kingdom of heaven is as a man traveling into a far country, who called his own servants and delivered unto them his goods," right? "And unto one he gave 5 talents, to another 2, and to another 1, to every man according to his several ability. And straightway took his journey." That person left after giving 5 to one person, 2 to another person, and 1 to the next. I won't go through the whole story. I just want to cut to the chase, if you would. In essence, when this same person comes back and checks on the goods that he gave, or the talents that he gave these individuals, the one that had 5 doubled his, had 10. The one that had 2 doubled his and had 4. And then when he got to the one that had 1, let's hear what it says in verse 24 of chapter 25. "Then he which had received the 1 talent came and said, Lord, I knew thee that thou art a hard man, reaping where thou hast not sown, and gathering where thou hast not strewn. And I was afraid, and went and hid thy talent in the earth. Lo, thou hast that is thine. His Lord answered and said unto him, Thou wicked and slothful servant, thou knewest that I reap where I sowed not, and gather where I have not strewed. Thou oughtest therefore to have put my money in the exchangers, and then at my coming I should have received mine own usury or interest." And he actually says, "Take therefore from him and give it unto him which has 10 talents. So the one that had 5 and doubled it, take that one that you have and pass it to someone else." Justification. A lot of times we give excuses because we're trying to justify the action or inaction that occurred. In this particular case, this person had the 1 talent. They came and broke out all these things about this ruler, and he says, "I knew that you were a hard man, and this is what I thought about. And I thought about you have sown where you have not reaped, and you have reaped where you have not sown." And also he said, "And I was afraid." And remember, in our top 5, one of them was fear, right? And so fear, justification, things of those nature, that's what moves us to this place of excuses. But I want us to learn and glean from this text that excuses not only are not very effective with people, but as we see in the text, they're not effective with God. These texts here are actually in the red, Jesus speaking. And so it didn't work for Jesus either for us to give excuses. Very similar to what we had last week when we talked about Jesus saying, let the dead bury the dead, right? Even in the case of a funeral, let the dead bury the dead. How many times, I know I have had to not make an appointment here or there or do some things because of a funeral, because we feel like, that's significant enough that someone in my family or someone that I esteem has passed, and I want to go there to celebrate. Jesus says, let the dead bury the dead. And so excuses are not the issues, but why do we justify? We typically justify because in our minds, we're thinking there is still a discussion about guilt and innocence. And right, so we should give reasons or justification for guilt and innocence, but that guilt or innocence has nothing to do with repairing what wasn't done that we made the excuse for. Right? Are we tracking with that? And so in this particular case, this man here, he gives his argument and says, it's because you're hard, it's because I was afraid. He is basically trying to say, I'm not really guilty of doing anything wrong. I'm actually innocent because I was afraid, and because I knew you were a taskmaster, that's the reason I didn't do it. And so sometimes you can use reasons to mitigate or to measure out whether you are right or wrong, guilty or innocent. However, what it does not take away is the fact of whatever was supposed to be done wasn't accomplished. Right? And that's, at the end of the day, that is the bottom line, and that's what you're looking for. And that, God says, that, yeah, there's no reasoning, there's no justification that you can come up with that gets you past that moment. And so I pray that you can chew on that a little bit and know that when I'm giving reasons, when I'm giving justification, when I'm really bottom line giving an excuse, at that moment, all I'm really saying is I'm not really guilty. I'm really innocent, and here are the reasons. But the person that was expecting something to be done that wasn't done, all they're hearing is it wasn't done. And that's why just a simple apology, just a simple correction is the best thing. And let's leave the justification, let's leave the reasoning, let's leave all those things to the side, because really we're embarrassed and all those other things we said in top 5. So pray through that. I know it's not easy. That's a heavy lesson. But next week, we're going to dig into a little bit further, and we're going to talk about, again, those issues that come in, and we want to say, I didn't know, right? Yeah. Does that work? We'll see. Continue to make God proud in all you say.